Hello and welcome to another fun-pack-filled episode of Gar Borras' Time Machine. This is episode 31. Gar, we had fun doing our three-part Tonight Show special, and people have been really digging all three parts of that. Today, to just get started, in two words, and let's see if people know what I'm talking about, it's showtime! And of course, I'm talking about the 1988 film, Beetlejuice. And first time ever, Gar, in the history of the show, we're going in your time machine to visit the 1980s, which was, I don't know about you, but it was one of the most funnest times of my life. And just to give people like an idea of what was going on in the world back then, okay, the top song in 1988, I don't know if you remember this, Roll With It by Steve Winwood, who was, of course, the singer from Traffic. He had a huge solo hit with that. Do you remember that song?
Yes, I do.
And then top movies of 1988 included Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Rain Man, Coming to America, Big, Die Hard, and of course, Beetlejuice. And I think all these movies I mentioned, we're going to have to do future episodes on. They're very worthy, I think, of that. Most famous person in 1988, believe it or not, was probably Roseanne Barr. That's when the Roseanne TV show kind of first premiered, and she was first coming really famous. And as far as the scandal at the time in 1988, probably the biggest scandal going on back then was Milli Vanilli, which, of course, featured Rob and Fab, and they were revealed to be just kind of the faces of the group. It was revealed they were professional lip syncers and did not actually sing at all on the record.
Well, and I remember at that time, that scandal was devastating for them.
Yeah.
It's so crazy to look back now.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many like obvious lessons to be learned, from that. And what I mean by that is that one of the two guys in Milli Vanilli, because of that exposed, they were exposed that they weren't actually singing, and they were just professional dancers, and lip syncing. And, it was such a huge, shocking scandal that he wound up taking his life.
Very sad. Yeah, very sad.
And it's really crazy because now here we are,
34 years later.
34, almost 35 years later, and all musicians, well, not all, but I'd say 90% of the performing shows that we watch
are lip sync
of very high-end shows, very, very expensive, very high-end shows that we are watching that, has that going on. There are bands that don't do the backup vocals at all.
Yeah.
It's all pre-recorded, and then when they do their show, it just sounds so perfect.
Yeah, how the world has changed.
Because there isn't the human element, because once you interject the human element, now you interject imperfect.
Yeah.
But that was kind of an unusual thing for that time that made that
such a
whole
scandal
thing really big.
So scandalous.
But
yeah.
Beetlejuice at that time there was a big anticipation.
Yeah, I remember
by the public before the movie even came out. The studios did a really good job at marketing because when you saw the billboards and you saw all that kind of stuff, that it was very different from anything anybody had really ever seen. Tim Burton's style that he puts into the movie and everything. It was really, really eye-opening, different, and so so the public got really interested.
Yeah.
And, I think the public knew that it was, really kind of had a gut feeling that it was going to be really good, because nobody really knew that much about Michael Keaton.
Oh, yeah.
This was really, really early in his career, where he had not really established himself to be what he has become now. And so, even though people really didn't know that much about Michael Keaton, the little bit that you could see in the trailers and the whole ambiance and backdrop of the movie, the public really got this really high anticipation. So then when the movie came out, it was just a huge success.
I mean, Gar, this is a time when people would go to the movies and they would have great trailers. I mean, that's still one of my favorite reasons for going to the movies. I love to watch the previews before the main feature. Now, you can even go on YouTube and type in, a Beetlejuice trailer, and it'll have the original trailer from back then that was shown in the theater. And you are so right, because anybody that watches the trailer, especially back then, in the theater when you're before the movie is even released, we're seeing the Beetlejuice trailer on the big screen. The anticipation, just everything that was in the trailer, it was such eye candy, like something you'd never seen before. Just the anticipation, could not wait to see. And then I tell you, for the first time in years, in prepping for the show today, I watched Beetlejuice for the first time in years last night. And
same with me.
And I tell you, first thing. Okay, the first thing. Maybe I wasn't really aware of the first time I seen it because I was a teenager in high school. But Michael Keaton, who plays the title role of Beetlejuice, does not even come into the film until 25 minutes into the film.
I remember that.
The build-up.
That was the thing that people talked about too.
The build-up of even him appearing in the movie, it does not happen until 25 minutes later after fact. I mean, you mentioned about Tim Burton. I mean, you talk about Tim Burton all these years later and all the great films he's made. And the one thing they all have in common, besides great storytelling, is great visuals. Like I said, Beetlejuice is beautiful eye candy. Anytime you look at you just look at the cover of a DVD if you have it, or the movie poster, or you look at any of the shots throughout the movie. It's beautiful eye candy. And the thing with Tim Burton, it was following the success of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which was his first kind of breakout film. All of a sudden,
which was hugely successful.
Tim Burton became.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure was a big success.
It launched the guy's career. I mean, as far as director Tim Burton, I mean, following the success of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Tim Burton all of a sudden becomes a bankable director. So when his next film, Beetlejuice, he goes to kind of approach Hollywood with this. Okay, well, you had this success with this movie, so sure, we're going to greenlight this all of a sudden.
Well, and the rest is history.
Yeah, yeah.
I kind of equate Tim Burton and his whole style that he brought to making movies. I kind of it's kind of the punk rock of movies. Kind of,
and it's kind of interesting. So Beetlejuice would come first, of course, but now let me ask you, when you're watching the film last night, Gar, or even for the very first time in 1988, once Michael Keaton appears as Beetlejuice on screen, what's the first thing you kind of think of when you see Beetlejuice on the screen for the first time?
Oh gosh, I never thought of it in that way.
Well, here's what I thought of last night watching it.
I just couldn't wait to get to the Michael Keaton parts because the trailers looked so good. I couldn't wait to see his character.
Because here's what last night watching it, I noticed this for the first time when Michael Keaton first appears on screen as Beetlejuice. I'm thinking to myself last night as I'm watching it, man, how much he looks like the Joker right there, and how funny is it that just the previous year, 1987, when they came out with the first Batman film, in the theaters, Michael Keaton was also, which again, another Tim Burton film. Michael Keaton played the role of Batman, and yet I don't know if that was just a common thread, but How strange is it that Beetlejuice kind of looks like the Joker?
Well, you are 100% right, and there are a lot of people nowadays that consider Michael Keaton to be the best Batman of the whole
franchise.
Different actors that have taken on that role. But the reason why I was saying it was punk rock is because Tim Burton was always going for shock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? His whole style, the artwork, the fonts for the lettering, and all of that stuff. When you're, I know that Nightmare for Christmas is later on, but it's still an example of how his work, kind of goes for shock, because you're talking about Nightmare and Christmas in the same sentence.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So his style was kind of shock. And Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah. Exactly.
It kind of, when I'm saying that, I'm oversimplifying because it's way more complicated than that.
It's almost kind of like...
It does have the element of shock to it.
Sure. Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. It almost kind of is like what you'd expect maybe if Alice Cooper was to do a horror flick. Similar types of maybe visuals. That's just kind of what comes to mind when I think of shock. The other thing we should let people know is as far as, again, the time frame we're talking, the movie itself was released on March 30th, 1988, as we mentioned, directed by now legendary director Tim Burton, starring Michael Keaton, Alec Baldwin, Gina Davis, and Wynona Ryder. Now, Gina Davis and Wynona Ryder have kind of just disappeared from Hollywood. You don't really hear too much about them anymore. I guess they've kind of retired from acting. But
Wynona Ryder has actually re-emerged recently within the last 5 years, because she is the main character in the hugely successful series
Stranger
Things.
Oh, I wasn't even aware of that. I have to, for that reason alone, I'll have to check that out. Thanks for kind of updating us on that. But I will tell you, again, part of the reason in watching the film last night is just to kind of reacquaint myself with film and prep for the show today, but also because of the fact that Michael Keaton does not appear in the film for 25 minutes into the film. I'll tell you the first thing I really took notice of here, a very young Alec Baldwin that looks nothing like he looks today. I mean, he looked like very young, maybe in his early 20s, wearing glasses, looked like a skinny kind of nerdy type of guy, but looks nothing like what we know Alec Baldwin to look like. But again, 34 years later, we all look different. But I picked up on that right away.
Well, just like everyone, when we're young, we're thinner, and our, our necks are thinner and everything.
That's all of us,
and then when we get older, it just seems like, everybody gets thicker. Your neck gets thicker, your face gets thicker, and everything like that. And some people, when that happens, they still, look, very similar to what they looked like when they were younger. But there's other people that when they age over that kind of time period, and those same things that I was saying happen, they look so different than what they looked like back then, where when somebody points it out that, hey, that's so-and-so, and then you're going, no way. You know what I mean? You don't even recognize them when, by what they look like now as to when they were young. But, it's so weird because people say that about Axl Rose. I went and visited a friend of mine recently, and he was saying that was an imposter. It wasn't Axl Rose.
Wow.
And I was like looking at him like quizzically, like, what are you talking about? He's aged, and this is what he looks like now. And I kept saying that, and he was like, no. He was convinced it was someone else. But anyways, we're getting off track. I do that a lot. Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. That's part of why we do this, because it helps bring up memories and stuff. And I tell you, watching the film last night, I got to tell you, I'm glad we chose this to do an episode on for one of our holiday themed shows, because in watching the film last night, I really forgot what a great fun film it is. And one of the things is, okay, it's become a tradition, not just myself, but like a lot of people, they think of Beetlejuice around Halloween time. It's just kind of become a normal thing. Even where I got the idea to do this episode was I was shopping one day in Target, and around this time every year they release all these great horror movies and Halloween flicks and holiday themed movies, and they had Beetlejuice, a huge stack of Beetlejuice movies on the shelf. I thought, I haven't seen that in years. I got to pick that up. It was only like $4.99, and I'm watching it last night, and it's funny because people think of it as a Halloween themed movie, and it has nothing to do with Halloween time. There's no mention of Halloween. It's just kind of a spoofy, kind of fun. They call it like a horror spoof. In fact, when I was looking up about Beetlejuice, it says Beetlejuice is a 1988 American fantasy horror comedy film, and I think that's part of a reason so many people love this film, because I don't know that I'd really consider it a horror film, except for, okay, it's kind of got these it's a spoof on all these crazy looking monsters and ghosts, but there's no mention of Halloween, but yet people have come to think every Halloween that's a movie you got to watch around that time of the year.
Guilty right here on the other side of the phone.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, it was classic for every Halloween. We watched Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
Loved watching that movie, and and that's what kind of started the tradition of different times of the year watching movies, and doing that whole thing, and but now for Halloween, it's hands down Beetlejuice. Every year, it's a tradition that I watch Beetlejuice.
And watching the film last night, another thing that I really picked up on was besides that, like, a lot of times people growing up, probably you have this experience like watching classic horror films and getting this, the shit scared out of you. And the thing is, what's fun about Beetlejuice is, okay, it's not really scary. It's kind of a fun spoof. You get maybe a little spooked, but you don't get terrified. And I love the fact that it is a comedy, so it has the comedy element to it. And I always loved, one of my favorite things is just watching comedies. I love to laugh, and it's so true when they say laughter is the best medicine. I mean, probably, I think you'll agree, one of the funniest scenes in the movie is when at the dinner party, and then they break out into singing the Banana Song, and I mean, right there, I was like, I was on the floor.
Yes, that scene made the movie famous.
Yeah.
Because there's so many awesome elements to the movie, but when at the end of the day, when everybody was talking about the movie after they had seen it, what was the first thing people would do? Would be they would start singing that song.
Day.
And it just it made it had a huge effect on the resurgence of the popularity of that song.
Oh, sure.
Which also really helped out in Harry Belafonte's retirement.
Yeah.
Because he was getting residual checks for his royalties for doing that song. So it was just a very unique movie that didn't copy what anybody else was doing, but basically yet kind of it really started its own genre.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, like most people, when I think of Beetlejuice, because Michael Keaton plays the title role, I automatically think it's a Michael Keaton kind of starring film. And he's like the title character, but what you realize is all the other actors in the film are kind of equally as important. I mean, first of all, the plot of the film kind of centers around Alec Baldwin and Gina David. The characters they play, they kind of get tragically killed, and then they become these ghosts, and they don't want anybody moving into their house. And then they meet the daughter, and they become kind of friends with her. And she tells her parents about these ghosts she's met, and they first, of course, think she's crazy. And then the father is one of these kind of rich, scheming type of guys, and he's trying to convince everybody eventually, oh yeah, Yeah, there are ghosts in the house, and he believes it. Almost like he's trying to kind of profit off of it.
That's exactly what he was trying to do.
Yeah, so there is that element to the film, which kind of makes it real fun. But like watching the film last night, I kind of think almost that Alec Baldwin and Gina David were more of the stars of the film than even Michael Keaton. Of course, without Michael Keaton, it would not have been as good of a film because he kills it as Beetlejuice. But you get what I'm saying? I think Alec Baldwin.
Absolutely. When during that time, like I was saying earlier, Michael Keaton was not as well known. At that time, but the reason why I knew him was there was a really popular show on Channel 7 that came on after the news, Eye on LA.
Or I remember that. Yeah. Okay.
On the Town or something. You know what I mean? And they were doing a little piece on Beetlejuice, kind of promoting Beetlejuice before the movie came out, and not Beetlejuice, but the movie that Ron Howard had done at that time, and Michael Keaton was starring in the movie, and Ron Howard was being interviewed in that piece, and he was saying nobody knows who this guy is, but this guy is going to be huge.
Sure.
And he was talking about Michael Keaton in this movie that was coming out, that they were doing this promotional piece on this thing on Channel 7. And so because I saw that, I wound up watching the movie, and the movie was called Night Shift.
Oh, Night Shift, yes.
And it was,
it had Henry Winkler.
Keaton, and what's that gorgeous girl from Cheers?
Shelley Long.
Yes, Shelley Long. And it was starring those two, and nobody knew who Michael Keaton.
Wow. Yeah.
And Ron Howard, this is one of the first movies that Ron Howard had made on his own, and he was pounding the table saying that Michael Keaton was going to be this huge, very successful star in L.A.
He was right.
And look at how it turned out. A few years later, he winds up doing Beetlejuice, and his career just absolutely explodes. But Ron Howard knew
he made that prediction,
that Michael Keaton was going to be, and I highly recommend to anyone see that Ron Howard movie because it's the first movie, it's the launching movie for Michael Keaton, and he is so good in that movie, and the movie is really funny. It's also starring Henry Winkler.
Yeah, I remember that.
From Happy Days, and it's just such a good movie. But yeah, this is it's kind of a lot of people don't know that all of this stuff was happening in the mid to late 80s.
And again, I dare say, as great of an actor as Michael Keaton is, and he's kind of got a legendary career, all these years later. I think the two films he's always going to be remembered of or thought of is Beetlejuice and Batman, and because those were two such iconic roles. I think probably the only one else that people remember for role Batman is Adam West. So, the fact that you're up there with Adam West, I think you're in good company.
Well, all I can say is if anyone checks out Night Shift, it is not a waste of time.
And another interesting fact about Beetlejuice is in the United States, Beetlejuice was a critically commercial success, having made $74.2 million, Gar, from a budget of $15 million. So
that's a bankroll.
Right there. Could you imagine? And what's interesting is for years there was rumors of doing a sequel, and they're even talking about Beetlejuice Goes to Hawaii, but for whatever reason they never went ahead with it. But eventually they had an animated TV series, and so Beetlejuice has kind of carried on in one form or another. But I would love to see either a remake or a reboot or something. But Michael Keaton is still here, so why not?
Hey, well, who did steal that idea that that they were kicking around about Beetlejuice and going on a vacation to Hawaii and all that stuff.
Who is that?
Hotel Transylvania.
Oh, wow, okay.
They wound up running with that ball with that whole script idea because they took the goth Hotel Transylvania family to Hawaii.
Oh,
and,
wow.
And it's that same juxtaposition, it's just like, and obviously it worked. So, you can definitely see the creative juices, really good creative juices that Tim Burton had.
And then Beetlejuice, as far as the character, I think what makes he's this kind of lovable monster. I mean, you hear other people talk about him throughout the film, that he's a troublemaker and you don't want to bring him back. Don't make the mistake of saying his name 3 times. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. I love that you have that setup to kind of know this about Beetlejuice. And then once he comes into the film, he kind of goes with, he kind of gets an argument with Alec Baldwin's character, Gina David, but he ultimately helps him out and, kind of comes back to life. And so I think, he's kind of a monster type, but a lovable one at that.
Everybody loved that movie.
Yeah, sure. No denying that.
That's the only thing I can say is because during that time, it was just perfect timing for that movie to come out. It was perfect timing for that style to be launched on the public and everything. It's so weird because if you would have taken Tim Burton's style of movie making and released it in the 70s would not have embraced that whole style and thinking and backdrop and everything. So the late 80s was just a perfect timing for Tim Burton to release that.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, as I was just mentioning, in response to the success of Beetlejuice, an animated TV series was created for ABC, and it ran from September 9th, 1989 to December 6th, 1991. So, it did last for a few years. And, a big part of a lot of these movies is the soundtrack. And you might be interested to learn this. The Beetlejuice soundtrack was scored by Danny Elfman, the singer of the band Oingo Boingo, and the soundtrack was originally released in 1988 on CD, cassette, and vinyl. So again, that's kind of letting you know what was going on in the world. I mean, still had cassettes, still had vinyl, Vinyl's been making a comeback, but that's what was big then.
And at that time, the public only knew Elfman from his work from Oingo Boingo.
But
at that time, really, people were not really familiar with him doing soundtracks and doing that whole thing.
But that's what he's known for now.
People were kind of really, not shocked in a bad way, but kind of shocked. Wow, look, he's comes from a rock band, and there's so much more to him. He's got definitely layers to him.
In fact,
you know what I mean? His whole soundtrack career became a whole second career for him.
In fact, a lot of people hear the name Danny Elfman may not even have a clue about this band Oingo Boingo, because he's known more these days for doing a lot of these great soundtracks, and I can't think of another one he's done off the top of my head, but I know he's done a lot of them.
Weird Science.
Okay, Weird Science.
Oingo Boingo is the band that does Weird Science.
Okay.
That song for the movie Weird Science?
Wow.
That's Oingo Boingo.
Wow, and the thing is, his name has become synonymous with great movie soundtracks. I mean, there's a couple of guys like that. Danny Elfman, Randy Newman, John Williams. They're big soundtrack guys, and they were known for other things.
There's Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer back in the 70s.
Wow, yeah, you're so right. And now, you might not be surprised to learn that that the film won Academy Awards for, of all things, Best Makeup. How could they not?
Well, when I went back and watched it, just to kind of refresh.
Yeah.
When I was watching the special effects, I was like thinking to myself, wow, this like looks really hokey, like 1920s special effects.
Yeah.
Where it kind of almost stops and it's really kind of herky-jerky, and I go, wow, I thought that special effects was more advanced. But Tim Burton was actually going for that. That's what he was trying to achieve, is this 1920s special effects, hokiness.
Yeah. And also, that is so interesting. But also just to give people an idea about how successful this film was, also due to the success of Beetlejuice, a Beetlejuice video game was eventually released in 2016. There was a Beetlejuice Broadway musical of all things on Broadway, if you can imagine that. Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of musicals. I'm a musician.
Yeah.
But I'm not a fan of musicals.
That's funny. Yeah. And this is a real fun fact that I learned. I read this quite few places. Warner Brothers originally wanted to call the film House Ghost. Tim Burton jokingly suggested calling the film Scared Sheetless, and was shocked when the studio actually considered using that title.
He was saying it sarcastically, and to his horror, they were receptive.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you better watch what you wish for,
Yeah, but the guy was such a creative person, and the whole thing, like, remember I was saying the timing was perfect.
Yeah.
In your mind, when you think of the spelling Beetlejuice, you think of the beetle, the bug, and juice, orange juice, which what they do in the movie. But it's actually a solar system or something like that. Called Beetlejuice, and but because Beetlejuice, the spelling was different than what people would visualize in their mind, and people were completely unaware of what it had to solar systems and all that kind of stuff. It just worked as in my business what they call a hook.
Yeah.
That gets your attention and gets you to go, huh?
In fact,
what? Your curiosity? That's called a hook.
And
it's so weird because hooks usually work more simply, but Beetlejuice, in a more complicated way, became a hook.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I don't know if you picked up on this in watching the film last night, but I did right away. Now, if you look at the cover of the DVD, it's spelled Beetlejuice as you would expect, Beetleguice. Now, in the movie, if you notice, as they say Beetlejuice, and he kind of rises up from the grave. On the grave site, Beetlejuice is spelled a different way, and I picked up on that. There's a hook. There's a hook right there you're talking about.
They did it the way you picture it in your mind.
Yeah, and Michael Keaton, I was interested to learn, and this says about, I think we've talked about this many times in many of our episodes, goes to show what a great actor he was. It said Michael Keaton ad-libbed 90% of his lines in Beetlejuice. Can you imagine? So most of his script was not even written out for him, or they probably had it written out, but he ended up just ad-libbing 90% of it. So he really kind of made the character his own, I feel, knowing that.
Well, nowadays, in movies and TV shows, there's a lot of ad-libbing that goes on. There are certain comedians, that their whole career, the success of their career is on their incredible ability to improvise.
Yeah.
But back in the late 80s, improvisation was not
welcome.
In fact, back in the late 80s, if you were trying to improvise, directors and all of these people would try to hold you down. No, you know what I mean? You're infringing on the director's creativity. So, people, looked at improvisation in a much more negative light back at that time. So when you had, a relatively little-known actor that's doing that, and that has a huge significant effect on the success of that particular character. That's pretty groundbreaking. Because people were not improvising like that back in those days. I'm not saying it didn't exist, but to the level of what it's being done now,
I mean, it was frowned upon.
It's not even close to what's being done now.
It was so frowned upon. And another thing I found interesting that another interesting little tidbit of information. It says Tim Burton originally wanted, of all people, get this, Sammy Davis Jr. to play the role of Beetlejuice because he was a fan of Sammy Davis's since he was a child. But Warner Brothers did not think Davis was right for the part. Now, that kind of shows you how very much the world has changed since 1980. I don't know why they thought Sammy Davis was wrong for the part. I can kind of guess, but I'm not sure, so I'm not going to say. But I mean, if this was if Tim Burton was making Beetlejuice today and he was going to the Hollywood studios and he was kind of pitching his film, I think you get a very different response. You might get, "Oh, Sammy Davis in the title role of Beetlejuice. That is great. This is social justice. We are going to put a black man, as a title character. It'll be a great thing for the studio. It'll be a great thing for the film." I think they would have got a very different response.
Totally. But it also is that whole thing that you're talking about there, where it kind of shows you how Tim Burton, even if it wasn't his idea, if it was the better idea, all he cared about was the best product. Because when the studio suggested Michael Keaton, excuse me.
Yeah.
And once he got a chance to check out Michael Keaton and see, what Michael Keaton was all about, he was all about it. He's going, let's use this guy. You know what I mean? He just became, let's go. And
what's interesting about that is we sit here now, we probably, tell each other, Michael Keaton was great as Beetlejuice, and it's true. I can't really imagine anybody else playing the role, but that's because we know Beetlejuice is Michael Keaton. Now, we may be saying the same thing years later now in 2022 if Sammy Davis Jr. had played the part. But again, I do think it would be a very different Beetlejuice for a number of reasons,
Totally different. But when I came across that piece of information, I stopped and kind of tried to visualize it in my mind.
Yeah.
And once I started kind of visualizing it in my mind, I could see where Tim Burton was going to want to go with this. Yeah. Because Sammy Davis Jr. kind of had this visual, thing about him that could lend himself to Tim Burton's style.
Yeah. And it's interesting, too, because when you hear about, we do research on these movies or TV shows, and you learn about people that almost got the part, or people that were considered but didn't get the part, you think to yourself, wow, it would have been a very different show, a different character, a different movie. But yeah, imagine Sammy Davis too as Beetlejuice. You forget he was a song and dance man. He was part of a Rat Pack, with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. He did a lot of great movies. He was a singer, a dancer. So I could see him as Beetlejuice in the sense. Could you imagine? Kind of like I kind of think of like the one scene, in Young Frankenstein that we talked about in one of the past episodes. Could you imagine Sammy Davis as Beetlejuice breaking out into song and dance and singing all these great musical tunes? I could kind of see that, but again, it would be a different character.
Well, nothing to take away from Sammy Davis Jr. I still think Michael Keaton was the best choice. Yeah,
that's true.
But it's interesting to hear that you saw Sammy Davis his potential, just like I kind of, it wasn't the better choice, but I saw the potential.
Yeah, the potential. That's a good word. And what's interesting in talking about Michael Keaton, and he fit the part so well, and we think now all these years as we're having this discussion today, nobody else could do as good a job as Michael Keaton. We'll just never know. But he is Beetlejuice, and that is so true. But originally Michael Keaton turned down the Beetlejuice role because he did not understand the film and the character, but changed his mind after meeting Tim Burton in person and seeing Pee-wee's Big Adventure. See, again, after Pee-wee's Adventure, I guess Michael Keaton sees that film for the first, okay, this guy's got some potential. Wow, maybe just visually eye-catching, eye-candy.
Seeing it in a different light.
Yeah, he's seen the possibility. He's seen the potential, I guess, in working with Tim Burton.
And pretty much the entire cast, they really had difficulty getting the entire cast to sign on because the script was so weird.
Yeah. It's one of those things, I think, until they started working on it or until they met the director, until they got to, okay, he's kind of this kind of strange, oddball type of character, but he's got a vision, and I think a lot of people, once they met him, once they talked to him, they've seen the potential in Tim Burton.
Well, but I also see Catherine O'Hara the same way too. Yeah. How she's, I can't see anyone else playing that part better either.
No. Yeah, you're so right.
Basically, her character in Beetlejuice is very similar to the character in that TV show that she. God, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a recent TV show that was became very successful. It came out of Canada. But basically what she was doing is in that TV show that she's doing recently is the same character as what she was doing in Beetlejuice, because it's so perfect.
Yeah, and you're so right on that. And here's another interesting fact I learned. Also, another person, if you can believe this, that was considered for the role of Beetlejuice, the late and great comedian Sam Kinison. I could kind of see it, but I don't know. Again, that would have been a different Beetlejuice. Could you imagine?
When you first said it was kind of hard, but as time, even now, I'm quickly kind of seeing the potential.
And I see the potential.
I still say Michael Keaton's the better choice.
Oh, sure.
But I can definitely see Sam Kinison having potential with that role too.
And again, if that had been the guy that got the role, we'd be having a conversation right now going something like this. Sam Kinison, he was a rock star comedian, and all these years later, he sadly, he died way too young, but Beetlejuice is still the film he's remembered for. What a great job. I could just see having that conversation, and because he's passed on, you'd be saying, what a legendary film this has become. What a legendary role this was for him. It's just one of those things. We'll never know.
Well, he's one of those, his career ended too fast.
Yeah.
The Andy Kaufman category.
Syndrome, yeah. And if you can believe this, okay, another person, it said Kirstie Alley of Cheers, this of course before she was ever in Cheers, was offered the role of Barbara, but NBC would not allow. Okay. So Kirstie Alley was offered the role of Barbara. That's the one that played Gina David, that played Alec Baldwin's wife in the movie. She was offered that part, but NBC would not allow her out of her contract to do the movie, so she had to turn it down.
Studios.
Yeah. And
going around their power.
Yeah, and again, another thing I learned about Sam Kinison not getting the role, part of the reason he didn't take the role was his agent. Can you believe this? His agent never told him that they called and offered him a role. I mean, if you were Sam Kinison and you later found out, hey, the agent didn't tell you about a big role like that, would you not be pissed?
Fired.
Yeah. And kind of a great place to kind of end this today. Just to kind of give you a couple other names of people that were considered for the role of Beetlejuice. I think they would have all been interesting choices. But again, I think you're so right. The right guy got the part in Michael Keaton. Dustin Hoffman, Robin Williams, Christopher Lloyd, Bill Murray, Robert De Niro. They were all considered for the role of Beetlejuice. But the role, of course, as we said, went to Michael Keaton.
Well, we should also mention, the casting genius of casting Robert Goulet.
Oh, yeah.
For his character in the movie, even though it's a bit part, and Dick Cavett. I really say that's casting genius because those two guys really lend perfection to that type of character.
Yeah, and here's an interesting thing about Dick Cavett. Okay, of course, if anybody lives in like the Los Angeles area and you get Antenna TV, every so often you'll see an old episode of the Dick Cavett Show. And Dick Cavett, of course, in regards to our little show we do here, he came up a couple times in our Tonight Show special, his name, because before he ever had the Dick Cavett Show, he got his start on Jack Parr's Tonight Show as a writer and kind of talent scout. And so when you hear the name Dick Cavett, you don't really think of him as an actor, but you're so right. When I'm watching the film last night, and after having done our Tonight Show special and his name came up during that, I noticed the name Dick Cavett as the credits are rolling, and I'm like, and I spotted him right away in the film. I thought, wow, okay, he's not an actor typically, but he hasn't done a lot of movies, but man, he played that part so well.
Absolutely. And that character that I was saying about Catherine O'Hara, her Schitt's Creek character is the same character as her character in Beetlejuice.
Yeah, and it almost makes you think, okay, so she became probably really well known from Beetlejuice, and they're like, okay, that's what people think of her as, so we're going to do a similar thing in this little series, because people think of her so much from Beetlejuice.
Well, she's etched out a very, very good career, and honestly, she's her style of comedy. When I started, kind of being exposed to her comedy, back in the late '80s, I was like, it was okay. But nowadays, I recognize, the quality of her genius with that style of comedy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it's a very unique and original comedy.
Oh yeah.
She's very talented, extremely talented, and she's right up there with all of the other characters in Beetlejuice. Yeah,
and the fact that her and Michael Keaton are still acting all these years later, 34 years later, like Gina David is kind of retired. So that says that they're just amazing at what they do. And another thing, Gar, is I think that I really took notice in watching the film last night. Like we said, it's considered a horror kind of comedy spoof, and I think that's what makes it so fun, because you're not going to get horrified or scared to death watching it. It's a fun film to watch around Halloween time. And the thing is, like, one of the funnest scenes I think in the movie is where Alec Baldwin and Gina David are on the screen, and all of a sudden, like, he becomes headless. His head just kind of pops off, and she turns into this ugly looking kind of monster face. And you're like, what the hell's going on here? And yet it's a movie, so we don't really question it. It's supposed to be a fun little movie. It's Hollywood. You kind of believe what you're seeing, but at the same time, it's like nothing you've ever seen before. And like where he just becomes headless, that was like, as crazy as it sounds, that was so funny to me. It's like, wow, what am I watching here?
Well, when I watched Beetlejuice for the first time, when the movie was over, I wanted to watch it again immediately.
Yeah, in fact, like I said, when the film was originally, I was still in high school. I was a young man in high school, and I had the same experience watching it last night. I hadn't seen it in years, and I kind of wanted to watch it again. I thought, I forgot what a fun little film that is. So I really urge people who've not seen the film in years, do yourself a favor, watch it.
Oh my gosh! If someone decides not to watch it, you're actually depriving yourself
Of a fun time. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, there's no way that you can watch that movie and not
have a good time.
See the comedy in it and not appreciate it and not feel like you had a good time when the movie, at the end of the day, when the movie was over.
I mean, it took me back to when I was that young, and I'll sit here and tell you, probably, I loved every scene. I mean, it was that fun of a movie, but if you ask me, like, what is a standout scene, I really think the scene most people will really enjoy is kind of the dinner party scene where they break out, singing the Banana Boat song. I mean, it's like, you can't help but, fall on the floor laughing. It's just comedy like you've never seen. And it's
like you've never seen. And that's what's hard for the public that has seen everything that Tim Burton has done. Because it's hard for people that have already watched the full body of work of a particular, highly talented person. But to think that at that time, this was the first time that the public was being exposed to it. And like I had brought up earlier in this episode, is if you would have taken this movie and released it back in the 70s, it would not have gone over. I think it would have bombed, back in the 70s, because the timing and the society, how society thought, and everybody's appetite for these type of movies had not gotten to that point where they were receptive to his style of movie making.
Yeah.
Really, I cannot say enough about the timing of when the movie was released. It was perfect timing.
Yeah, and doing these episodes with Gar, I have a lot of fun because, like I said, I'm watching this film for the first time on my DVD player in the living room of my house last night, for the first time in years, and it really took me back to 1988 when I was a teenager in high school. And it's one thing to see it on the big screen, but what we like to do when we do these episodes is like, if I haven't seen a film like that in years, I like to kind of go back and watch it, to prep for the show, because I don't want to just sit here and say, oh, it's a great film, it's a funny film, because if I had not watched the movie again last night, I don't know that I would have remembered the dinner scene. Like watching it last night, I had forgotten that. I don't know how, but it's been years, so I totally forgot about that scene, and I would not have had that to talk about, And so that's why we do this, because if I'm going to tell somebody this is a good film, I want to have them know that I experienced it again. I watched the film over. I know what I'm talking about. That's why we do this.
Well, I think we pretty much covered it.
Yeah.
My suggestion to anyone that's listening to this episode of The Time Machine, if you haven't seen the movie in a long time, or if you have never seen the movie again, it's time for you to go out and get some popcorn and turn out the lights and watch this movie, because it's the perfect one to watch at night in the dark.
Yeah, and just to wrap this up, Gar, it's interesting that we're doing the episode today, because I was watching the news when I got up, my local news channel, I think it was Channel 5, and they were talking about, anybody wants to know what Tim Burton's up to these days? It's going to premiere on Netflix, I believe November 27th. If you can believe it, they're going to launch a Netflix series. It's an Addams Family-based TV series. It's called Wednesday. It's going to center around the character of Wednesday, like at an all-girls school. It's supposed to be when she's an adult, like her adult life. And again, I think that's kind of a modern, kind of different kind of take on it. But I know it's Tim Burton, so I know it's going to be good. So I'm going to at least tune into the first episode, because just based on what I've seen on the news today and heard about it, I want to check it out.
You just went me from zero to gotta have it in less than 60 seconds.
And what's cool about Netflix...
I didn't know anything about this Netflix thing.
Yeah.
But as you were explaining it, to be honest with you, I completely see the potential in this being very, very popular with the young crowd.
And this is a retro thing because, I mean, we did an episode on the original Addams Family TV show, and that goes back, the 1960s, and they're still talking about the Addams Family. They're still trying to, and another thing Netflix has out is Rob Zombie's version of The Monsters. I haven't had a chance to check it out, but you can buy it on DVD. You can check it out on Netflix, and I think Netflix, if this is a success with the Addams Family, they're going to do the same thing. You'll probably be able to buy it on DVD, which I definitely will, have in my collection because it's one of those things. Even though it's a retro thing, they're kind of putting a modern twist on it, and I dig that.
Oh, I got a feeling Rob Zombie's going to do a great job with that.
Yeah, well, you can check that if you got Netflix. It's on now. They just premiered it last week, so I urge you to check that out. And finally, Gar, just because I know you're a Pink Floyd fan that you are, I thought it would be fun to wrap this up as far as once again what was going on in the world in 1988. You and I once did a previous show on Dark Side of the Moon, and I was reading. Dark Side of the Moon was still on the Billboard chart for a total of 741 weeks, Gar, from 1973 to 1988. I'd have to find out. I'd be interested to know what was the album that finally knocked that off the charts.
Oh God, I have no idea.
Well, I'll have to look that one up.
I think it really just goes to everything winds up just taking its course.
Oh sure.
You know what I mean? Because that's Herculean.
Oh sure.
In the scheme of achievements for
a rock band.
Releases for any musical artist.
I don't know if anybody.
A Herculean achievement.
I mean, I don't know if anybody, even Michael Jackson, was on the charts that many years with one album. So I think they're the only one probably ever accomplished that. So way to go, Pink Floyd. And final thought for the day, Gar, to let people know what's coming up next in episode 32, and we do this in 2 weeks from now. Gar and I thought, again, we're kind of getting into our holiday themed type of shows. We started the Halloween season off with Beetlejuice today. In 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about one of our all-time favorite Halloween classics. It's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and I'm looking forward to that, Gar.
So am I, brother. Bring it, because I'm having an absolute great time. And hopefully all the people that are listening to this are having just as good a time. Because that's what this whole thing is all about. Yeah. Just reminiscing about things or possibly learning about things from the past that either you experienced a long time ago and it just brings back great memories, or you just have this really great affinity for things that were popular from the past.
Yeah, and
both of those people, Jason and I absolutely love you.
Yeah, and I'm going to let people know, not to give anything away just yet, but we got like 5 more shows for this year to do, and Gar and I are already planning stuff for 2023 future episodes, and we hope to continue to do what we've been doing. Plus, we got a few ideas of talking about things maybe you're not even aware of, or but what we've learned about, and we're going to leave it at that. But Gar Borras, once again, we got to remind people who you are. You are the lead singer of Appetite for Destruction, great Guns N' Roses tribute band based out of Los Angeles. Gar Borras is the rock star of everybody's favorite pop culture playground. So thank you once again, Gar Borras. We will be talking to you again real soon.
I am humbled. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
And could you hold on just 1 minute, Gar, and I will be right with you.
Chaotic Riffs Magazine.